I thought I knew everything about my family. I thought secrets were something other people kept. But the day my half-brother Ethan knocked on my door, drenched in rain and carrying a confession that would change both our lives forever, I realized I didn't know anything at all. This is the story of how a hidden truth became the beginning of something beautiful, something forbidden, and something that felt more right than anything I'd ever known. My name is Mason, and this is my truth. The October rain hammered against my apartment windows like it had a personal vendetta against glass. I just settled into my worn leather couch with a mug of chamomile tea, my Friday night ritual after another exhausting week at the architecture firm, when three sharp knocks interrupted the storm's rhythm. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair plastered to his forehead, water dripping from his jacket onto my doormat. Even distorted by the fisheye lens, I recognized those green eyes immediately. Ethan. My heart performed an acrobatic routine I hadn't authorized. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years, not since our parents' awkward wedding anniversary dinner where we'd barely exchanged 10 words. Our family situation was complicated. My mom married his dad when I was 16 and he was 18. We'd never lived under the same roof for more than a few months at a time, always maintaining a polite but distant relationship. Stepbrothers, half-brothers technically, since we didn't share any blood, just a hyphenated legal connection and the occasional obligatory holiday gathering. I opened the door. "Mason," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered, "I know this is unexpected, can I come in?" Water pooled around his boots. His usual confidence seemed diluted by whatever had brought him to my doorstep on this miserable night. I stepped aside without a word, watching as he entered my space, 6 feet 2 inches of soaked denim and visible tension. "Let me get you a towel," I managed, my voice steadier than my pulse. In the bathroom, I gripped the sink and stared at my reflection. 27 years old, brown eyes that my ex-boyfriend used to call warm honey, a jawline I'd inherited from my father, and an expression of complete confusion. Why was Ethan here? We weren't close. We weren't really anything. When I returned, he'd removed his jacket, revealing a gray Henley that clung to his frame in ways that made me look away too quickly. "Stop it," I told myself. "He's your stepbrother. This is inappropriate." But my therapist's voice echoed in my mind from our sessions about internalized shame. "Mason, being attracted to someone doesn't make you bad. Acting on inappropriate attractions might be problematic, but thoughts aren't crimes." "Thanks," Ethan said, taking the towel and running it through his dark hair. "I'm sorry for just showing up, I didn't know where else to go." "It's fine," I lied, settling into the armchair across from him. "What's going on? Is it Mom and Richard? Are they okay?" "They're fine." He draped the towel around his neck, those green eyes finally meeting mine. "It's not about them, it's about me, about something I've been carrying for a long time and I can't do it anymore." The air in the room shifted. The rain seemed louder suddenly, or maybe it was just the blood rushing in my ears. "Okay," I said carefully, "I'm listening." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. His knuckles were white. "Do you remember that weekend 3 years ago when our parents went to Napa for their anniversary and you were house-sitting at their place?" I did remember. I'd been 24, fresh out of a painful breakup, spending a lonely weekend in the suburbs watching my mom's cat and eating ice cream directly from the container. "You showed up Saturday night," I said slowly. "You'd gotten into a fight with your girlfriend, Lindsay, right?" "Lindsay," he corrected, but there was no nostalgia in his voice. "Yeah, that fight, that breakup, it wasn't really about what I told everyone, that we wanted different things, that the timing was wrong." He paused, his jaw working. "I broke up with her because I couldn't keep lying to her or to myself." My fingers tightened around my tea mug. Lying about what? The words hung between us like suspended rain droplets, waiting for gravity to pull them down. "I'm gay, Mason." The world tilted slightly, then righted itself. 3 words, simple, profound, not what I'd expected, but also somehow not entirely surprising. I realized I'd been holding my breath. "Okay," I said softly, "thank you for telling me." Ethan laughed, but it was a broken sound. "That's it, just okay." "What do you want me to say?" I kept my voice gentle. Coming out was different for everyone. I'd done it at 19, lost half my friends, gained a clearer sense of self. But Ethan was 30, a mechanical engineer who worked with a predominantly straight, masculine crowd. His father, my stepfather, was a good man but traditional in many ways. "I'm honored you trusted me with this, really, but I'm confused why you're telling me now like this in the middle of a storm at 11 p.m. He stood abruptly, packing to the window. His reflection in the rain-streaked glass looked haunted. Because it's not just that I'm gay, it's why I couldn't tell anyone, it's what I've been hiding alongside that truth. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. I set down my mug because my hands had started trembling. The night I showed up at the house 3 years ago, Ethan continued, still facing the window, I wasn't just running from Lindsay. I was running from a realization that terrified me. That whole weekend, being around you, talking with you about your life, your work, your dreams, it was the first time I'd felt genuinely comfortable with another man. The first time I'd felt, he trailed off. Felt what? My voice was barely a whisper. He turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his expression made my chest ache. Connected, attracted, completely and utterly fucked up because you're my stepbrother and I had no right to feel any of it. The confession landed like a physical blow. All the air left the room. 3 years, he'd carried this for 3 years. Ethan, I started, but I didn't know how to finish. What was the appropriate response when your stepbrother confessed he'd been attracted to you, when saying the words aloud made something inside you recognize a truth you'd been denying? Because I had felt it too, hadn't I? That weekend, the way conversations had flowed too easily, the way I'd caught myself watching him fix the leaky faucet, noticing the flex of his forearms, the guilty dream I'd had that Saturday night that I'd immediately repressed and never examined. I'm not asking for anything, Ethan said quickly, misreading my silence. I'm not expecting you to feel the same way. I've been in therapy for 8 months, working through the shame, the internalized homophobia, all of it. My therapist said I needed to be honest about this, that keeping it secret was poisoning me. So here I am being honest, probably ruining our family dynamic forever, but at least I'm being honest. You're not ruining anything, I said, finding my voice. Ethan, sit down, please. He did, perching on the edge of the couch like he might flee at any moment. I took a breath. I need you to understand something. When you're gay, especially when you figure it out young like I did, you learn to compartmentalize. You learn to shut down certain feelings automatically because acting on them would be complicated or inappropriate. You learn to tell yourself that warmth is just friendliness, that admiration is just respect, that attraction is just, I met his eyes, just something you're imagining. What are you saying? I'm saying I felt it too, that weekend. I told myself I was lonely, vulnerable after my breakup, misreading friendly connection for something else. I told myself a lot of things to avoid admitting that I was attracted to my stepbrother. The confession hung between us, tangible as the rain outside. Ethan's expression cycled through shock, relief, confusion, and something that looked dangerously like hope. So what do? He asked finally. We can't just ignore this now that it's out there. He was right, the secret was a living thing now, no longer contained. It filled the space between us, demanding acknowledgement. I don't know, I admitted. This isn't something I ever thought I'd have to navigate. We're adults. We're not related by blood. Legally, technically, there's nothing actually wrong with. I couldn't finish the sentence. But our parents are married, we have family dinners, there are holidays and expectations and complications, Ethan finished. I know, believe me, I've spent 3 years cataloging every single complication. Why now? I asked. Why tonight? Why couldn't you keep carrying the secret? His answer was simple, devastating. Because last week I ran into you at the coffee shop on 5th Street. You were with someone, that guy with the dark beard and the laugh that carried. You looked happy. And I realized I'd rather risk everything, risk our family being uncomfortable and our parents being confused, than watch you be happy with someone else without you at least knowing the truth. My mind flashed to James, my friend from the gym who'd joined me for coffee, just a friend, but Ethan hadn't known that. That was just. It doesn't matter who he was, Ethan interrupted. What matters is that I've been in love with you for 3 years, Mason, not just attracted, in love, and I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't. In love, not just attraction, not just physical, the words rearranged everything. The rain had softened to a steady drumbeat. My apartment, usually so familiar, felt like foreign territory, a space where the rules I'd always followed no longer applied. I need time, I said finally, to think, to process. This is overwhelming, Ethan supplied. I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize for being honest. I stood, suddenly needing movement. You can take the guest room tonight. It's too late and too wet for you to go anywhere. Tomorrow, with clear heads, we can talk more. He nodded, relief evident in the way his shoulders dropped. Thank you. As I gathered sheets and pillows for the guest bed, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, the same face as an hour ago, but everything had changed. My stepbrother loved me, I was attracted to my stepbrother, our family would never be simple again. But as I said goodnight and closed my bedroom door, one truth crystallized. I didn't want to shut this down. I wanted to explore it, consequences be damned. That realization terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Morning arrived with weak sunlight and the smell of coffee I hadn't made. I found Ethan in my kitchen, standing at the counter in his dried clothes from last night, 2 mugs steaming beside him. He looked up when I entered, offering a tentative smile that did absolutely nothing to help my heart rate stabilize. "Couldn't sleep," he explained. "Hope you don't mind that I raided your coffee supply." "It's fine." I accepted the mug he offered, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The contact lasted half a second but felt like a statement. I didn't sleep much either. We moved to the small breakfast table by the window. Outside, the world looked washed clean, all bright October colors and puddles reflecting sky. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with everything unsaid. "I've been thinking," I started, wrapping both hands around the warm ceramic, "about what you said last night, about what I said, about all of it." Ethan waited, patient in a way that made me like him even more. This was new, seeing him as a person rather than just a family obligation. Noticing the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he took his coffee black, the slight circles under his eyes that matched my own. "I think we need to be systematic about this," I continued. "If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, we need to understand what we're risking and what we're potentially gaining." "You want to make a pros and cons list?" His tone was gentle, almost amused. "I want to be smart about this." I met his eyes. "You said you've been in therapy. I've been in therapy too, on and off for years. One thing I've learned is that acting on impulse, especially with something this complicated, usually leads to disaster. So what do you suggest?" I took a sip of coffee, buying myself a moment. "I suggest we spend today together, really together, not as stepbrothers making awkward small talk at family dinners, as two people getting to know each other without all the family context clouding things. Then we decide if this is real enough to pursue despite the complications." "A trial run," Ethan said thoughtfully. "One day to figure out if what we're feeling is substantial or just forbidden fruit syndrome." "Exactly." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those green eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "You're being very rational about this. I spent 3 years wrestling with guilt and shame, and you've processed it overnight into a practical plan." "I haven't processed it," I corrected. "I'm just better at creating structures when I'm overwhelmed. It's the architect in me. When life gets chaotic, I design a framework to make sense of it." "Okay," Ethan nodded slowly. "I'm in. What does this day look like?" We decided on simplicity. The farmer's market downtown, lunch at the Indian restaurant I'd been wanting to try, a walk through Forest Park if the weather held, normal date activities, but we carefully avoided calling it a date. The word felt too definitive, too loaded with implications we weren't ready to face. The farmer's market was crowded with Saturday morning shoppers hunting for heirloom tomatoes and artisanal bread. Ethan and I wandered through the stalls, falling into an easy rhythm. He gravitated toward the honey vendor, enthusiastically explaining the differences between varieties while I watched him light up in a way I'd never witnessed at family gatherings. "You really love this stuff," I observed as he purchased a jar of wildflower honey. "I grew up helping my grandmother with her bees," he said, something soft entering his expression. "She died when I was 14. These little things, honey, the smell of beeswax, they make me feel close to her still." It was a glimpse into Ethan's interior world, a place our family relationship had never allowed me to access. I found myself wanting more, wanting to excavate all the hidden layers. At a pottery stall, I picked up a handmade mug, admiring the glaze work. "This is beautiful, the craftsmanship is incredible." Ethan leaned close to examine it, his shoulder pressing against mine. The contact felt deliberate, a test. I didn't move away. "You're always noticing the construction of things," he said. "The way they're built, how they fit together, is that what drew you to architecture?" "Partially, but it's more than that." I set down the mug carefully. "I like creating spaces where people feel safe, where they can be themselves. My best projects have been community centers, LGBTQ plus youth facilities, places where architecture serves as a kind of shelter in multiple ways. That's incredible, Mason. The way he said my name with genuine admiration and something deeper made my skin warm. You're literally building safe spaces. I just design HVAC systems for office buildings. You keep people comfortable, I countered. That matters too. We continued through the market, and the conversation flowed like it had that weekend 3 years ago. But now, without the guilt barrier, it went deeper. Ethan told me about coming out to his best friend 6 months ago, how terrified he'd been and how accepted he'd felt afterward. I shared about my first boyfriend, the relationship that had taught me both what I wanted and what I wouldn't tolerate. With each revelation, the space between us felt less like a chasm and more like a bridge. Lunch was a sensory experience. The Indian restaurant was small, family-owned, filled with the aroma of cardamom and cumin. We ordered too much food, palak paneer, chicken tikka masala, garlic naan, and ate family-style, our forks occasionally competing for the same piece of naan. This is dangerous, Ethan said, tearing off a piece of bread. I could eat here every day and be completely content. The mark of a good restaurant, I agreed, when you want to move in and set up residence in the corner booth. He laughed, and I realized I'd been trying to make him laugh all day, chasing that sound like it was something precious. When had this shifted from an analytical exploration to something I was actively enjoying? Can I ask you something? Ethan's tone turned more serious. Last night you said you'd told yourself that weekend was just loneliness, that you'd compartmentalized it. How do you do that? Just shut down feelings? I considered the question while chewing slowly. It's not shutting them down exactly. It's more like, when you're queer, you learn early that not every attraction can or should be pursued. The straight guy in your high school English class, your boss at your summer job, your friend's boyfriend, you feel things, but you train yourself not to dwell on them. You redirect the energy elsewhere. With us, the family connection made it an automatic redirect. I didn't let myself examine the feeling too closely because the complications seemed insurmountable. And now, he asked quietly, are the complications still insurmountable? I met his gaze across the table. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think that maybe some complications are worth navigating. His smile could have powered the entire restaurant. Forest Park was painted in autumn glory, trees blazing with red and gold, the air crisp with the promise of winter but not quite cold. We walked the main trail, dodging joggers and families with strollers, and somehow our hands found each other. It wasn't dramatic. Ethan's pinky brushed mine. I responded by hooking our fingers together, and suddenly we were holding hands, like teenagers, like people at the beginning of something. Is this okay? He asked, even though we were already connected. Yeah, I said and meant it. It's okay. We found a bench overlooking the lake and sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching ducks glide across the water. The physical connection, palm to palm, his thumb occasionally stroking across my knuckles, felt both monumental and perfectly natural. I need to tell you something else, Ethan said eventually, about why I waited 3 years to say anything. I turned to face him, our hands still linked between us. I'm listening. It wasn't just fear of rejection or family drama, it was shame. He looked out at the water, jaw tight. Growing up, my dad, your stepdad, he's not homophobic exactly, but he's got these ideas about masculinity. Real men don't cry, real men fix things with their hands, real men marry women and have kids. I absorbed all of that. So when I realized I was attracted to men, and specifically to you, it felt like I was failing at being a man in multiple ways. Wrong sexuality, wrong target, wrong everything. That shame isn't yours to carry, I said firmly. It's inherited bullshit from a generation that didn't know better. Intellectually, I know that now. My therapist has basically beaten that into me. He finally looked at me, vulnerability naked on his face. But emotionally, sometimes I still feel like I'm doing something wrong by wanting you. I squeezed his hand. I understand that feeling more than you know. When I came out at 19, my dad said he loved me but needed time to adjust. He didn't speak to me for 6 months. Even now, years later, there's this tiny voice that asks if being gay makes me less worthy of love. Therapy helps, being out helps, but the voice doesn't completely disappear. So how do you silence it? I don't, I admitted. I just practice choosing different voices, louder voices, the voices of friends who love me exactly as I am, my therapist's voice reminding me that shame thrives in silence, and now, I hesitated then pushed forward, now maybe your voice telling me that wanting this isn't wrong. Ethan's eyes searched mine, and then he was leaning in, or I was, or we both were. The kiss was soft, questioning, a first kiss that tasted like chai and possibility. His hand came up to cup my jaw, and I forgot we were in a public park where anyone could see. I forgot we were stepbrothers with a complicated family situation. I forgot everything except the gentle pressure of his lips and the rightness of it. When we pulled apart, my heart was racing. That was, Ethan started. Yeah, I finished because words seemed inadequate. We sat there, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Around us, the park continued its Saturday afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the monumental shift happening on this one bench. So, Ethan said finally, pulling back just enough to see my face, "What's the verdict, real enough to pursue?" I thought about the day, the easy conversations, the laughter, the way he'd shared his honey story and his shame with equal vulnerability. I thought about the kiss that had felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been searching for. "It's real," I said. "It's real and terrifying and probably going to be the most complicated thing either of us has ever done. But yes, I want to pursue this." His smile was sunrise and relief and joy all compressed into one expression. Really. Really, but Ethan, I needed to be clear. We have to be smart about this. We need to tell our parents eventually, but on our timeline, we need to be sure before we blow up the family dynamic. We need to actually date properly and see if this works outside of one perfect Saturday. "I can do smart," he said. "I can do patient. I've waited 3 years. I can wait however long we need to make sure we're doing this right." We kissed again, longer this time, and I felt the last of my analytical walls crumbling. This was happening. We were happening. The sun was starting to set as we walked back to my car, hands intertwined, and I realized that the secret Ethan had revealed wasn't just his truth, it was ours. A shared secret now, but one that felt less like a burden and more like a beginning. 3 months later, I stood in my childhood bedroom at my mom and Richard's house, adjusting my collar in the mirror for the 100th time. Downstairs, the sounds of Thanksgiving preparation filled the house. My mom's laughter, Richard's commentary on the football game, the clatter of dishes and warmth of family gathering. Ethan had arrived an hour ago with his famous sweet potato casserole, and we'd exchanged a brief, secret glance in the foyer before retreating to our respective corners of the house. This was the dance we'd perfected over the past 12 weeks, behaving like cordial stepbrothers in public while building something profound in private. My phone buzzed with a text. "Ethan, meet me in the garage in 5 minutes, need to talk." My stomach tightened with familiar anxiety. We'd known this conversation was coming, had planned it, actually. Thanksgiving seemed like the right time to tell our parents, but knowing something intellectually and being ready for it emotionally were two different things. I found him in the garage, leaning against his car, still wearing the dark blue sweater that made his eyes impossible to ignore. He straightened when he saw me, nervous energy radiating off him. "Hey," I said softly, closing the door behind me. "Hey." He crossed to me immediately, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like the apple pie my mom had been baking. We'd gotten better at these stolen moments. The quick kiss in my apartment hallway before he left for work, the way we'd learned to communicate volumes with a glance across a restaurant. "You okay?" I asked when we separated. Terrified, he admitted. "You." "Same, but we agreed, today's the day." Over the past 3 months, what had started as a cautious exploration had deepened into something undeniable. We'd gone on actual dates, movies, dinners, a weekend trip to the coast where we'd stayed in a bed and breakfast and made love for the first time with the sound of waves through the window. We'd met each other's friends, navigated our first argument about whether to tell our parents sooner or later, and discovered the 100 small compatibilities that made a relationship work. We'd also faced the hard questions. Could our family handle this? Would our parents feel betrayed? Would holidays become battlegrounds instead of celebrations? But we'd decided what we had was real, was worth fighting for, and keeping it secret indefinitely wasn't fair to anyone, especially not to us. "We tell them together," Ethan said, taking my hand. "After dinner, before dessert, united front." "United front," I agreed, squeezing his fingers. We returned to the house separately, maintaining the illusion a little longer. Dinner was the usual chaotic affair. Too much food, too many conversations happening at once, my mom fussing over whether the turkey was dry while everyone assured her it was perfect. Across the table, Ethan and I kept catching each other's eyes, drawing strength from the connection. Richard told a long story about a fishing trip, My mom asked about my latest project at work. Ethan's younger sister called from college on video chat to say hi. Normal. Everything was perfectly normal except for the secret sitting between Ethan and me like an extra guest. When the plates were cleared and my mom stood to bring out the pies, I cleared my throat. Actually, Mom, Richard, before dessert, Ethan and I need to talk to you both about something. The atmosphere shifted immediately. My mom froze halfway to the kitchen. Richard muted the football game. They exchanged a concerned glance, the universal parent look that said, "What did they do?" "It's nothing bad," Ethan added quickly, though his hand trembled slightly as he set down his water glass. "At least, we don't think it's bad, but it's important." We'd rehearsed this, we had talking points, but standing there under our parents' worried gazes, all the carefully planned words evaporated. "Mom, Richard," I started, "you know I've always been open about being gay, that's never been a secret in this family." My mom nodded slowly, confusion clear on her face. "Of course, honey, we've always supported you." "I know, and that support means everything." I glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragement. "What you don't know is that Ethan is also gay. He came out to me 3 months ago." Richard's eyebrows shot up. He looked at his son with an expression I couldn't quite read, surprise certainly, but not anger, not disgust. "Ethan, is this true?" "Yes, Dad." Ethan's voice was steady despite his nervousness. "I've known for a while, but I wasn't ready to tell anyone until recently. I'm sorry I didn't come to you first, but I needed to work through some things on my own before I could share it with the family." "Oh, sweetheart," my mom moved toward Ethan, maternal instinct overriding confusion. "Thank you for trusting us with this. We love you no matter what, you know that, right?" "I do," Ethan said, and I saw him blink back the shine in his eyes. "I do now." Richard stood, walked to his son, and pulled him into a hug that made my throat tight. "You're my kid," he said gruffly. "Nothing changes that, nothing." I watched this moment of acceptance, feeling grateful but also knowing we weren't done yet. This was the easier part. "There's more," I said, and everyone turned to look at me. "Ethan didn't just come out to me 3 months ago, he told me something else, something about—" I took a breath. "About having feelings for me, romantic feelings." The silence that followed was profound. "And I have feelings for him too," I continued, the words rushing out now. "I know this is complicated, I know we're stepbrothers and this family situation makes everything messy, but we've spent the past 3 months really getting to know each other, dating, figuring out if what we feel is real. And it is. It's real and it's serious, and we wanted you to know because we're not ashamed of it and we don't want to keep hiding it." My mom sank into her chair. Richard's expression cycled through shock, confusion, and something that might have been calculation as he processed what we'd said. "You're together," my mom finally managed, "you and Ethan." "Yes," Ethan said firmly, "we're together, we're in love." In love, he'd said it to them before he'd said it directly to me, though we both knew it was true. The words hung in the dining room like prayer or confession. "This is," Richard ran his hand through his graying hair, "this is a lot to take in." "We know," I said. "We're not expecting you to understand immediately. We're not expecting you to throw us a party. We just need you to know the truth because we can't keep pretending we're just stepbrothers who barely know each other when we're actually in a committed relationship." My mom looked at Richard, some silent communication passing between them. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "Are you two? Are you sure about this? Not about being gay, that's not what I'm questioning, but about each other? This could make family gatherings very awkward if things don't work out." "We've thought about that," Ethan said. "We've thought about all the complications. But Mom," he addressed my mother naturally as he'd been doing for years, "I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about Mason. I spent 3 years trying to talk myself out of these feelings, 3 years of therapy trying to understand why I couldn't just move on. And the answer is because it's real love, the kind you don't walk away from just because it's inconvenient." I added, "We're not kids. I'm 27, Ethan's 30. We understand what we're risking. But we also know that finding someone who sees you, really sees you and loves what they find, that's rare. I found that with Ethan. And yes, the timing is weird and the family situation is complicated, but when in my life have I ever chosen the easy path?" My mom laughed wetly, wiping at her eyes. "That's true, you've always been stubborn about following your heart." "So where does this leave us?" Richard asked. He'd been quiet, processing. "If you two are serious about each other, what happens to our family, to holidays like this?" Nothing has to change, I said. We're still your sons, we still love you both, we just also love each other, and we're hoping you can find a way to be okay with that. The silence stretched. I reached for Ethan's hand under the table, needing the anchor. Finally, Richard spoke. When you two were younger, when Sarah and I got married, I hoped you'd become close. Brothers, friends, something I never imagined. He trailed off, then started again. But I raised you to be honest, Ethan, to live your truth, and if this is your truth, then I can't punish you for being exactly what I taught you to be. Really? Ethan's voice cracked slightly. Really? Richard looked at me. And Mason, you've been a good addition to this family. You've always been kind to Ethan, even when you two weren't particularly close. If this relationship makes you both happy, if you're treating each other with respect and love, then I can learn to accept it. My mom nodded, wiping her eyes again. It's going to take some adjustment. I won't pretend this isn't strange, but you're both good men and you clearly care about each other. That's what matters most. The relief that flooded through me was physical, weakening my knees. I felt Ethan squeeze my hand hard. Thank you, we said in unison, and everyone laughed, breaking the tension. Although, my mom added with a watery smile, I'm going to need you two to give me some time to figure out how to explain this to Aunt Patricia. You know how she is. We'll help with that, I promised, however you need us to. Dessert was a quieter affair but not uncomfortable. The elephant had left the room, replaced by tentative acceptance and lots of questions. Where did we go on dates? How long had we really known? Were we planning to move in together? That last question made Ethan and me exchange a glance. Actually, Ethan said, we've been talking about that. Mason's lease is up in February. And Ethan's place is bigger, I continued. So we're thinking about it, but we wanted to tell you about the relationship first before making any major moves. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Practical, I appreciate that you're being smart about this. As the evening wound down, Ethan and I found ourselves in the backyard, away from our parents' well-meaning questions. The November air was cold, our breath visible in small clouds. Above us, stars scattered across the dark sky like possibility. We did it, Ethan said, pulling me close. We actually told them. We did. I wrapped my arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him, and they didn't disown us. Your mom cried. My mom cries at insurance commercials. That was actually pretty restrained for her. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into mine. I love you, Mason. I know I said it in there without having said it properly to you first, but I do. I love you. I love you too. The words felt both monumental and simple. I think I have for a while, maybe since that first weekend, if I'm being honest with myself. 3 years of wasted time, Ethan murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Not wasted, I corrected. We both needed that time to become people who could handle this. You needed to come out, work through your shame, understand yourself. I needed to finish grieving my last relationship, establish my career, be in a place where I could handle family complications. Always so wise, he teased gently. Someone has to be the practical one. We stayed there in the cold, wrapped around each other until my mom called us back inside for leftover pie. Walking back to the house, hand in hand now without having to hide, felt like crossing a threshold. Inside, Richard had pulled out old photo albums and was showing my mom pictures of Ethan as a kid. Look how serious he was, Richard said, pointing to a school photo. Always thinking too much, even at 8. He still does that, I said, settling on the couch beside Ethan. The thinking too much thing. You're one to talk, Mr. Procon List, Ethan retorted, but his hand found mine again, our fingers interlacing with practiced ease. My mom watched this small gesture and her expression softened. You two are sweet together, she said quietly. I'm glad you found each other even if the path was unconventional. Everything about us has been unconventional, I said. Why should this be any different? I stood in the doorway of our apartment, watching Ethan arrange furniture that had arrived that morning. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of the loft space we'd found in the arts district, illuminating dust motes and possibility. The couch goes here, he insisted, pushing the sectional against the brick wall. It blocks the flow to the kitchen, I argued, but I was smiling. You and your architectural flow, sometimes furniture is just furniture. Blasphemy. He crossed to me, slipping his arms around my waist. What do you think? Does it feel like home? I looked around at the space we'd chosen together: exposed brick and high ceilings, room for my drafting table and his engineering books, a kitchen where we could cook together, a bedroom with enough space for the king bed we'd splurged on. It was ours, completely, officially ours. It feels perfect, I said honestly. We told extended family about our relationship at Christmas. There had been some awkward conversations and a few relatives who struggled with it, but mostly people had been supportive. Ethan's grandmother's sister, 87 and sharp as ever, had proclaimed that love was love and anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with her lawyer. We'd become fixtures in each other's lives at work events, family dinners, friends' parties. The novelty had worn off for most people. We were just Mason and Ethan now, a couple like any other, navigating the normal challenges of cohabitation and compromise. I was thinking, Ethan said, his tone shifting to something more serious, about what to do for the anniversary of the night I showed up at your door. That's not for another 4 months. I know, but I want to plan something special, because that night changed everything. I pulled him closer, resting my forehead against his. It was the scariest night of my life. Mine too. And the best. Yeah, he agreed softly, the best. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic. Inside, in our new home, we swayed gently to music only we could hear, the rhythm of two hearts that had found each other despite the complications, despite the fear, despite every logical reason why it shouldn't work. But it did work. We worked. And standing there in the sunlight, holding the man who'd revealed a secret I hadn't been ready for but desperately needed to hear, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes they come in the form of a stepbrother standing on your doorstep in the rain, gathering the courage to speak a truth that would change everything. Sometimes love doesn't follow the path you expect. Sometimes it creates its own path, and all you can do is be brave enough to walk it. Ethan kissed me, slow and sweet, and I knew with absolute certainty this was the path I was meant to walk, with him, always with him. I love you, I whispered against his lips. I love you too, he replied, my half-brother, my partner, my home. And in that moment, surrounded by unpacked boxes and infinite possibility, I had never felt more whole.